Oh, sorry, I had the mute on. Are we recording? Okay, welcome everybody. Thanks for taking the trouble to attend this evening. And we will start by, can we dim the lights? Where's the lights? Okay. All right, we start again. Welcome everybody. We have apologies from Jenny Morris, Walton Ann Mapham, Pete Scully, who's in Johannesburg, a bit far to come, Phil Harries Jones, and Pierre de Villiers had an op on his wrist this morning, so he phoned me this afternoon and said, Johan Retief also sends his apologies. Anybody else? That it, Pete? All right, and then approval of the 2022 AGM minutes. Can we get them? Gareth, can we get the minutes up? That's the agenda. Have we got a copy of the minutes there? Oh, that's the sort of end of the. Yeah. Well, anyway, those are the minutes. I presume everybody's read those and found mistakes. Anybody got any matters arising from the minutes? None. Can we ask then for approval of the minutes? In fact, from Laura. Second. Thanks, Mick. Okay, that's done. Quick and easy. All right, so then we can go on with the chairman's report. All right. So, 2022 was an exciting and inspirational year for Manus Astronomy. After the launch of the James Webb Space Telescope, we were treated to amazing first images released on 12th July. Besides this, the HAC was given the go-ahead at last by the Lottery Board to implement the superb astronomy educational outreach display at Gearing's Point on 7th April. That's when they were given the go-ahead. The project timeline, we can just get that, Gareth. But okay, this was a hectic schedule. They insisted that the project be finished by essentially November, and Pierre put together the committee and got going and hit the ground running, and it was blood, sweat and tears, 25 hours every day actually, for 7 days a week, the whole time. And in between, Pierre still managed to do other stuff. And so the go-ahead was given with a proviso project had to be completed in 2022. This is just Pierre's words here. Pierre proceeded with alacrity to activate the GPA-ED committee, who somehow managed with a superhuman effort to pull this off. Despite contractors having to deal with delays caused by problems like load shedding, there are still a few loose strings to deal with. Okay, Pierre was going to explaining about the GPA-ED, but he sent me a synopsis, and I'll just read that out just now. All right. Monthly meetings. We had a fantastic lineup of monthly meetings. Our person that organizes the speakers, being Peter Kotze. Thanks very much for that excellent lineup. If we can just, monthly meeting lineup, just to quickly look at that. Yeah, no, these are that's by function. Sorry. That one. Topics. Go back. There. All right. So there we can see we started off with Johan Retief's one. I didn't know he knew so much about rocket fuel and all the technology there. It was really telescope eyepieces by Chris Stewart. Went on a bit long. I had to cut him short. Here Comes by the Sun by Jenny Morris was a usual excellent presentation. And then all the rest, Professor Snow, Nicholas Erasmus, Stefan Lotz from, he's based in Sansa, Chris Engelbrecht and Horizon Telescope, and then at the end, Pierre gave a summary of all the goings on with the GPAED and installing it and so on. So all excellent topics. And then we had, I just want to check what I read here about stats and so on. All the meetings were held by Zoom, which enabled them to be recorded and posted onto YouTube, available for repeat viewing. The attendance average was 23% average of members. A couple of the meetings were swamped by members from other centres who also get notice of the meetings. I think there was at times there was about 70 or 80 people attending actually in 2 of the meetings, according to the stats anyway. Which makes a Zoom meeting very useful. You know, it's people from all over the country who can't just drive here for one meeting can attend. So definitely Zoom meetings won't go away, but also the meetings in person, I think there's just been a nagging demand by members for that to happen as well. So we will see how we go forward from here. Maybe we can have one every 3rd month and ease them in, or if we can. We were actually recording the meeting, and we can actually make this meeting live. We didn't make this one attend, but so that's also a possibility. The only problem is with the cost of this one. We decided to try it once, but it's a bit too rich for our taste. Maybe we can twist their arm and see what we can work out. There might be slightly different alternatives which will be cheaper. Okay, if we can just have a quick look at the other meetings of the other interest groups, that big detailed table. That one, yeah. So these are all the meetings which were meetings. So astrophotography was a whole lot of them. Cosmology. Astrophotography run by, is this on? It's not working now. Go to sleep. Oh, we'll have to check this just now, it's not working. Astrophotography run by Dion Krieger, or hosted by Dion Krieger, and I run the Zoom. And then cosmology I was running. I'm going to cut short through this quickly. Study group, all other interesting subjects which people want to discuss which are not directly astronomy. Okay. Sorry, I switched it off. Oh, goodness. Ah, there we go. Okay. All right. Thanks, Gareth. When you're back up there, then we can. All right. So I think a few of you attend a lot of those study groups as well. Right, I just want to say on the projects, the main focus for 2022 has been the implementation of the GPAED project, which required extensive blood, sweat and tears in the planning, execution thereof, particularly by the committee. Pierre gave a polished presentation of all it entails to the monthly meeting on 28th November. I just want to read a couple of the notes he sent me. First of all, the visitors to the site have shown through their reactions that the display is indeed successful in attracting their attention, and at least looking at what is displayed and then reading more about what they're familiar with. The animaletic sundial is unquestionably the star of the show, as visitors want to find out what it's all about, and once they succeed in reading off the time, being amazed by it. Time will tell how successful it is in stimulating an interest in astronomy or science in general. Secondly, the short time scale allowed by the NLC for the completion of the project did put a huge amount of pressure on the committee simply to meet this deadline. The committee was working flat out, simply checking the details of one phase of the project to sign it off to the next phase. There was simply never time to sit back and take a restful, holistic view of the project and adjust where appropriate. To quote a simple example, if there had been more time, the empty spaces on a few of the tablets would have been filled. Nonetheless, the committee richly deserves congratulations and appreciation for what they could achieve in the short, very compressed timescale. Finally, it soon became apparent that all visitors wanted to ask many questions from anyone who seemed to be knowing what it's all about. This illustrated the need for regular guided visits by someone able to answer all the questions of. Failing that, to get answers to all the questions from someone who knew the answers. Mick and Pierre will therefore be providing training to tourism office staff to be able to effectively guide such visits, and a one-page takeaway will also be available. So that was what Pierre sent me to talk about because he couldn't be here. All right. Besides that, there were ongoing maintenance projects to keep the Cliff Path solar model in a reasonable state of repair, as well as maintenance of previously installed sundial projects in public spaces and schools. The HAC committee accepted a landmark proposal to keep a reserve fund of 5,000 Rand in the Plus Plan account to accommodate unforeseen expense and to annually transfer the balance of the funds to a 12-month fixed deposit account that yields the maximum return. The income from this account would then be available as a discretionary fund for the ensuing year to be utilised at the HAC committee's discretion. First priority for this funding would be maintenance of the educational infrastructure installed by the HAC over the years. I don't know, that's the relatively financial sort of aspect of that. Maybe Laura can comment on that. Maybe we haven't got it quite expertly described there. Educational outreach. Mick Finn and Pierre de Villiers have been doing some sterling work regarding outreach throughout the year, aimed at educational outreach. Pierre de Villiers wrote the following in this regard. Mick was very diligent in being available for guided tours of the solar system model every Thursday at 11. There were a few guided tours, at least one attended by the OSM speaker, sorry. Unfortunately, it's not promoted actively enough by the tourism office. Pierre and Mick did show the Laconia grade 7s how to design and mark out the anomalatic sundial, in spite of internet issues. They also led the marking of the sun shadow stick on a number of occasions, but it didn't happen as regularly as it should, making it an ongoing experiment without explicit prompting from them. So yeah, some of the outreach was a bit difficult, and they put in a lot of effort, but I think there was a good response. Mick's comments, I don't know, Mick, I'm going to read out the comments you sent, unless you want to read them out. Okay, Mick said, you may want to add the tour we gave the tourism office so that they accommodate our model in the old station, and the whale crier who has joined me on a number of tours to highlight the importance of astronomy to our town. We also did a tour for the tourism students and enthusiasts, where we started with the importance of our clear air and starry skies for astrotourism and touring people wanting to get a broader appreciation of our place in the universe. After taking them on the Cliff Path solar model tour, we took them to Sansa, where they could get a better appreciation of our space weather and the importance particularly to the aviation and naval world. The NASA launch of the new Sansa auditorium, opened by the Minister of Science and Technology, Blade Nzimande, was attended by about half a dozen of our members, and NASA launched an international program at that opening. On a personal basis, a highlight for me was being able to give the same program to our 1969 Wits University College House. Now that's not me, this is Mick talking, so this is Mick's class. And how surprised and proud they were to see how much astronomy goes on in Amanas. Over 20% of them were medical doctors, and they were pleasantly surprised by everything. It is also a great consolation to have had the development opportunities afforded us by Pierre Hugo, and I'm going to say something later about Pierre Hugo. His passion to get gravity back into the dark energy space. The culmination is his philosophy of space book, edited by another member here, Carson. Mick says he challenged any other astronomy cosmology group to have put together such a wonderful publication. It was indeed an honour that he attended the solar model tour and afterwards made a donation to the upkeep and maintenance of our solar model. So pleased the book donations from members will go towards the continuation of these developments. So Mick feels privileged to play a development role in such an auspicious society, and Mick says thanks to both of you, whoever that is, sorry, for your constant assistance. But Mick has really brought a very valuable contribution to the HAC in all the stuff he does, and he works quite hard at it, as you can hear. What he describes about his own stuff is actually only a small portion of it. So thanks very much, Mick. Yeah, and then communication, thanks to Peter Harvey and Peter Kotzer for very ably taking over the reins of the newsletter from Jenny Morris in an excellent collaborative effort. Thanks to Peter for continuing to produce a top-class monthly edition of the Sky Maps, amongst his many and varied other duties, including producing meeting minutes, which certainly set an example for the rest of the centres in SA as to how it should be done. And then, yeah, I do the website and Facebook pages. On another matter, it has been discussed at committee meetings that we should make more use of technology to record information and minutes, and we'll be moving more to a digital cloud-based system to keep minutes and keep records and keep archives. There is actually a digital archive which has been set up by ASA, which we're also going to make use of, which we'll have access, or do already have access to. Yeah, absent members. I'd just like to mention then we've lost two very valuable members last year due to cancer. So I'd just like to say one of them being Pierre Hugo that Mick just spoke of, and that I read out Mick's words. I just want to read essentially what Pierre wrote in an email about him. It was with great sadness that the HAC heard of Pierre Hugo's passing. Our sincere condolences go to Jane and family. And he says, "Asieder het geval." Pierre was one of the first members who joined the HAC in 2008. His enthusiastic and passionate participation was always apparent. He was a visionary, highly respected and influential member of the HAC whose legacy will long survive him. At the AGM in the Ferncliff Hall in January 2009, the committee tabled a proposal to form special interest groups. Pierre was the first to raise his hand and volunteered to lead a cosmology interest group which met at his house on the 23rd of February 2009. The first and still only such interest group in the country. And essentially, actually now that the chairman of each centre has to, or takes part in ASA, which is the Astronomy Society of South Africa, and so I take part in those meetings every month as well, and I've been asked to lead the cosmology section. Essentially we just carry on, except all their members attend, because we are the only ones that actually still do that. He led the cosmology interest group from its inception for more than a decade before handing over the reins to me. In the process, he set the intellectual level of the group's discussions and continued to raise the bar through the many different phases and topics, particularly special and general relativity, homeostatic model. He had a series of lectures by Mark Whittle on a DVD, which was, I think it was about 48. It took us about 2 years to go through them all, which essentially taught you everything about cosmology, really. Then Sean Carroll and numerous other DVDs that were studied and enjoyed by a more or less constant number of members. A tribute to the relevance of the group and Pierre's visionary leadership thereof. His grand finale was a series of lectures summarizing his philosophical perspectives of cosmology. He converted these into a book called Space, a Philosophical Overview, which Gert Klaassen edited. The intellectual energy that he invested in this lecture series and our book was amazing, highly appreciated by the group, and a fitting finale to his 12 years of visionary leadership. Various HAC members remember him for his intellectual capacity, passion, innovative ideas and perspectives, creativity, humility, remarkable social skills in listening to different opinions in a never confrontational manner, and his irrepressible inquisitiveness. For example, he would typically say, if you tell me this ball is blue, I don't believe you until I understand why. Pierre was a truly remarkable man whom the HSC was privileged to have as such a passionate and influential member. Rest in peace, Pierre. You and your legacy will not be forgotten by all those who were privileged to know you and share your irrepressible passion for understanding. And then Benny Kotze was also didn't survive the cancer he had. We actually made a sort of plaque which we printed and sent to his family. And the contents of that I'll just read out. This serves as a token of appreciation for your enthusiastic and meaningful participation in all the activities of the Hermanus Astronomy. Sound. Okay. Okay, so on Benny Kotze, he was arguably its most active member, committee member who handled the educational outreach portfolio with distinction. He ran the Houston Space Cadets workshops, animalatic sundials, Cape Town outings. He was a keen observer who participated in all stargazing activities, Sidewalk Astronomy, Southern Star Party, Cedarburg, Bonneville schools and Sansa stargazing events. He was an HAC equipment expert and custodian. Huge and technically smart contributions to the installation and maintenance of the solar system model, sundials, and Gearing's Point Astronomy Educational Display Project. Active and value-adding participant in cosmology, study group, and astrophotography special interest groups. Immediately volunteering to do whatever need was identified. SKA token of appreciation, Neptune cage, Christmas party, etc., being a good friend. This token serves to confirm that his enthusiastic participation in all HAC activities meaningfully enriched the lives of HAC members. He will be sorely missed and fondly remembered. Now, Laura's just from John Saunders, a founder member of the HAC group who passed early in the year. Is that right? Was that in January? Sorry? Just before that, yeah. He was a chairman for many years, and he instigated the beginners group. He wasn't a very, very scientific, but a very good person at doing all kinds of outreach, and he instigated many of the methods we implemented in the way things were done and so on. I'm going to ask Laura, maybe she can remember a few things that I can't remember when she talks, just to quickly mention it as well. All right. So as you can hear, these were three very, very important people to the Hermanus Astronomy Centre in the past, and we sorely regret having lost them. All right. And then just generally about the committee members, we're going to go on to that at the end of the meeting, talking about electing committee, but I just want to say it is with genuine appreciation that I wish to thank the committee for the sterling work they have done in 2022. Some have had to jump in the deep end to take over the functions of the members who had resigned. For example, Dr. Peter Kotze and Peter Harvey took over the reins of the newsletter from Jenny Morris, with Peter Kotze doing the news items of interesting new astronomy developments, and Peter Harvey basically putting the rest together. Judging by the compliments which have regularly flown in during the year, they have done a really top-class job. Peter Kotzer also took over arranging the speakers. As we have seen, we've had a superb list of speakers with fascinating topics in 2022, and we'll have more of the same next year, in this coming year, which is the next year. Elaine Sykes has been learning the ropes of the Treasurer's job from Laura, who was supposed to have resigned. She just rolled her eyes. But due mainly to complications with making banking permission changes and changes due to deregistering as NPC after completion of the GPAED project, it's just been easier for us to have Laura keep on going for a while. And thankfully she agreed and has helped us out. And we owe her massive thanks for all she has continued to do, including keeping a sharp eye on all the financials pertaining to GPAED and not letting anything go astray. Pierre de Villiers resigned as chairman after many years at the end of last year. He tried to resign quite a bit earlier, but we managed to hang on to him for a while longer than he intended. And in between dealing with the complex task of managing the GPAED project with Mick Finn, he's been quietly getting on with numerous outreach activities as well with great success. As non-committee members, I must also make mention of Dion Krieger, who is in charge of our astrophotography section, and he's taught some of us most of what we know about astrophotography, besides providing the GPAED committee with invaluable support, as well as Johan Retief, a stalwart of our club, who's been giving fantastic talks in the past and has been keeping a beady eye on the admin of our membership numbers and all that goes with it. Many thanks to them for all of this. I'm going to say this, the current committee have agreed to continue for the next year. I was told by Pierre that that is the case. So, right. All right, so let's move on to the next item on the agenda then. That's the Chairman's report. Thank you very much. Can we then get approval or comments on the Chairman's report? Can somebody propose? Thanks, Peter. Peter Kotze. Second. Thanks, Laura. Okay, done and dusted. And then we move on to the Treasurer's report. Gareth, if we can get the balance sheet up, please. I'm going to mute this for a second.
Hello, is that working? Right. Before I actually get on to the Treasurer's report, I just want to say a few words about John Saunders. He started quite a few things. The beginners group, I believe, was his domain at his house in Voorklip. And then he also took tours of the school learners and that to Cape Town, to the Noon Gun, and also to the Science Centre in, I think it's Observatory, if I remember correctly. He did that a few times. And then, of course, they also ended up at the observatory, and they had, at some stage, they had viewing through the Maclean telescope. This is all off the top of my head, so if I sound a bit vague, that's why. Then he also, here at SANSA, he had a number of school groups that they used to, sort of show them things that, in the Science Centre and that sort of thing. Apart from that, I can't off the top of my head remember, but he was a very valuable member, and then he was fighting cancer for quite some time, and he didn't like the Zoom meetings apparently, so he wasn't actually active, although he was an honorary member actually for many years, as the people here would know. So I think that's what I can think of to say about John Saunders at this stage. I see his wife regularly at animal welfare. She is in charge of the cat volunteers, and she just mentioned, I think it was on Saturday, that it was exactly a year ago that John passed. So it's just very much a year ago. Right, well, to get on with the report.
Do you need this? It's working. You can just
Yeah.
if you need it.
Okay, let's just see. I just want to say also that Zoom meetings have become the normal over the past years, so standing in front of an audience is now strange. And fortunately, without masks, I have some chance of recognizing long-standing members. I met, who was it? I met a member at the mall a little while back, and we were still wearing masks then. And he greeted me, and I looked at him and I said, "Remind me who you are?" And he pulled his mask down, and I still looked blank. He'd grown a beard. So it was a double camouflage, double disguise. Right. Looking at the balance sheet first, the large minus loss figure is due to the Gearing's Point project being approved, and through Pierre's driving force, which entailed engaging a professional science editor and the graphic designer, selecting the best contractors and materials to manufacture and install 37 plinths and panels, plus various sundials, all requiring an enormous amount of time and energy to achieve before the end of the year. I must also not forget Derek and Dion, who assisted in the final touches, and also the operation that Pierre's having on his wrist that was caused by overexertion of tightening all those things on the panels. But I digress. Right, having spent most of the NLC grant, that leaves a small balance in the current account, which ties up with the figures shown on the income statement under NLC expenses. Let me see, is this on? Oh, yes. Yeah, that figure there with the hash on it, that you will see when we go to the income statement. It ties up with the balance that was left at the end of December in the current account. The figure below in red, which is that one there, is the total of astronomy funds in the plus plan and cash on hand. You can see there, and that's slightly higher than last year. Nothing much there. Moving to the income statement. Yeah. Right. Comparing the 2022 figures to 2021, the membership fee was not increased, as it hasn't been for a few years, but the figure is actually inflated by 2021 fees, well, the fees for 22 being paid in 22, whereas now in this year, the cut-off for being a paid-up member has been moved to the end of January, whereas it was February. So many members have paid their subs in December, so that accounts for the higher figure there. It's not that we have more members, we are virtually on a par. Right then, Sky Guides. Sorry.
I want to shift it up.
Okay. Well, I'll wait till we get to there, then we can shift up. Less Sky Guides were ordered this year than last year, and for some strange reason, one of the very few things, believe it or not, it was actually cheaper. The cost was cheaper than last year. So one of the few things that has come down, apart from the rain. I believe there may be the odd copy still left, if anybody still missed ordering or would like to get an extra one. Right, then the interest is virtually on a par, not much difference. Probably a little bit of increase in the interest rate. Then looking at that figure, a very generous donation of 3,000 Rand from a group of hikers who requested a stargazing event, and this has been earmarked for educational outreach. And then below that, Pierre Hugo's book Space, published posthumously, as I said, has attracted a number of orders, but mostly since year end. And the odd figure is due to the 10 Rand difference being paid in January. Okay, if we could move up to... Thanks. On the expenses side, the higher meeting expenses, there's quite a difference there, you can see. This is due to the purchase of an MS Office program for the HAC's laptop. It was a Rand short of 2,000. So added to the usual Zoom cost and small insurance premium, which covers the laptop and audio-visual equipment, which would be expensive to replace if something happens to it. Then we have, where are we, Sundial? Yeah. That actually is Sundial expenses. I just combined the two because Swallow Park was first and then the Gearing's Point Sundials were added to it afterwards. That was the cost of replacing the stainless steel thread and posts, without which the armillary sundial at Gearing's Point would just be an ornament. The solar system model expense there. It was necessary to renew some information plaques which have suffered weather and other damage. These new, more durable stainless steel sheets for the Sun and Pluto are yet to be installed. The Gearing's Point project has delayed this. Obviously, all time and effort has been channeled into that. The Gearing's project took off after the NLC approval, and as can be seen from the costs incurred in 22, which is the total up top there, agrees with that. Yeah. The available funds marked with the goodies there. If you can move up a little bit. Yeah. The available funds there is what was on the balance sheet. It's the balance in the current account at the end of December. There has been a little bit of extra items paid for since that. But there will be a small amount which will be refunded to NLC when everything is sewn up and finished. We still have to do audits and all sorts of funny things and close off the current account before we can say goodbye to it. small, whoops, sorry, did I do that? Whoops, apologies. Whoops,
Gone fast.
it's going the other way. Oh.
Okay, don't press those arrows.
Oops,
Did
okay,
that just now.
sorry, okay. Right. That small amount of bank charge on the Plus Plan account that was incurred because we can only have, I think it's 3 payments in the Plus Plan in the month, otherwise they charge us a bank charge. But that was unavoidable. And then the 150 Rand outreach expenses, that was the cost of information sheets which were handed out at the moon gazing session organised for Zwelishli, Lucanio and Mount Pleasant schools. And the last item, general expenses, that was a courier cost for returning vertical sundials for correction by the engravers. I believe this still has to be recovered. I'll follow it up. Right, that's it then. If anybody has any questions.
You can move the mic to you if you want to ask a question. I'm sure there must be lots of questions.
If anybody wants to know what the MS Office program is used for or why it was necessary, Peter can answer that.
Okay, can we get an approval of the Treasurer's report? Can we get an approval of Treasurer's report? Peter, and second Mick, thank you very much. Okay, thanks very much, Laura. I'll just lift this up.
That's about I must just say thank you to Elaine for offering to take this over, and she has agreed to actually do it once all the funds and that have been sorted out and the current account closed off and that sort of thing. So it's going to happen, but she has other things on her plate at the moment too. But thank you, Elaine.
Okay, thanks very much, Laura, and thanks for the kind words about John Saunders. All right, we are running a bit behind time. So appointment of auditors. What normally gets discussed under that? Oh, sorry. Can we just go on to the agenda slide then? Sorry. Appointment of auditors, Laura. What normally has to happen there? Sorry, I'm also new to this.
Could I just say that the audit, which is no longer actually required for the astronomy club as such. So once the NLC money and everything in that direction is fixed up and repaid and all the rest of it, Don Adams is doing the audit of that, and we've already allowed the cost of that in there. We've actually already paid for that as such. So it doesn't actually, it's not actually necessary to appoint an auditor because he is just sewing everything up and then it'll be finished. Okay?
Thanks, Laura. Okay, can we move on to election of the committee? The current members of the committee are myself, who's currently chairman. Pierre de Villiers is still the vice chairman. Peter Harvey, secretary. Peter Kotzer is the member in charge of speakers, newsletter, and generally a good angle to connect with a lot of very well-known speakers. Mick has been doing excellent work on outreach, as we've heard. And then Laura and Elaine will be taking over from Laura on the Treasury. Have I got everybody? I think so. All right, so can we take it that everybody has agreed to stand as committee members again this year? Any disagreements with that? All right, so that will be the situation then, and then the chairman gets apparently chosen again each time, but that will be done in a committee meeting by the committee at the next committee meeting, not during this meeting. If people want me to carry on, I will. All right, so we're behind time. Is Leanne here? Oh, here you are, sorry. Welcome, Leanne, and we're very privileged to have you here. I don't want to take up too much of your time. Would you like to go ahead with your... sorry, just before that, are there under any other business, or is there anything that anybody wants to bring up? Do you want the mic?
I've been to visit the presentation at Gearing's Point, and I've noticed that about 2/3 of the clocks, the perspex protection, is cracked. The reason for that, I would presume at this stage here, is different torque settings on the bolts. So not all of them are broken. My suggestion is that someone in the committee gets hold of the thing called a torque wrench, sockets, and checks the ones that haven't broken, right, and sees what the torque setting on a torque wrench is. We are taking the average of those, right, and if you have to replace the plastic, in a lot of cases we may have to, then we need to set the new bolts slightly less torque than what we've already got where they haven't broken. Because at this stage here,
Yeah, if I can just maybe chip in there, actually, I think the main reason the problem there was with the accuracy of the drilling of the holes in the mounting concrete, and not being exactly the same as the drilling of the holes in the perspex. So they didn't line up. So there was tension from one hole to the others, and that pushed. So the obvious lesson we learned from that was drill the hole slightly bigger in the perspex. Unfortunately, with the time pressure being put on us by the lotteries board, we couldn't do one thing and then try it out and see how it works, find out our mistakes. We had to just do the whole lot in one shot. We had no choice. We did order spare. We did cater a budget for spare perspex covers for each thing, and we might that was intention to replace when things start getting damaged or worn out after a few years, but we may have to replace some of those earlier than we thought. So unfortunately, yeah, in the new ones the holes have been made slightly bigger, and then all you do is you fill that in with a bit of something like Loctite, and then that settles in the correct position. So unfortunately that was a expensive lesson that we did learn. Okay, thanks very much for the tip anyway. We'll keep it in mind as one of the possibilities. Thanks very much. If there's no other business, then can we carry on with Leanne's talk, if everybody agrees? Thank you very much. Okay, Leanne, we're looking forward very much to your talk. You can go ahead and set up things as you want.
Thank you very much. Gareth knows that I have a height challenge. Thank you so much. Thank you. Perfect. Yeah. Thanks, Gareth. Right. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for inviting me to talk at your meeting today, and also for using our premises. I hope that you're happy and comfortable. We're very proud of this building. So my brief was basically to tell you a little bit about how this building came about, what we do here. Some of you have heard me speak before, so I try to make it slightly different. so that it's not always the same. And I won't take up much of your time, so I've just got a few slides just to introduce you to how we came to grow a space weather capability in South Africa, and why we're proud of the work that we've done. So I'll talk a little bit about SANSA and SANSA Hermanus, because maybe some of you are not quite aware of where we fit in, and then why space weather, and then about the project that gave rise to the control room you see in the back, and this beautiful building. So firstly, the South African National Space Agency was established in 2010 and became operational on the 1st of April 2011. Now, this facility that you're visiting tonight, and which many of you have visited before, is more than 80 years old. We had other owners before, but we were migrated as a national infrastructure platform into the Space Agency when it was established in 2011. The Space Agency is a Schedule 3A public entity. What that means is that we fall under what's called the Public Finance Management Act, which is basically like a really big book of rules that we need to follow. Talks about the way we govern, the way our accounting is done, and it basically says that we are an entity of government. So we're not a government department, but we are an entity of government. The department we fall under is the Department of Science and Innovation, and the Department of Science and Innovation these days, in the newly structured South Africa, falls under the Minister of Higher Education, Science and Innovation. So if you really want a tongue twister at a dinner party, you can say very quickly, after a glass of wine, the South African National Space Agency reporting to the Department of Science and Innovation, represented by the Minister of Higher Education, Science and Innovation. And if you can still find your breath after that, it gets quite a lot. So we are informed by several pieces of legislation, policy and strategy, which you'll be glad to hear I'm not going to bore you with tonight. They're listed there. There is a South African Space Agency Act and also a Space Affairs Act, as well as a space policy, and this governs the mandate and what we do. We have 5 programs in the Space Agency. Administration, which is exactly what it says. It's finance, SEM, IT, etc. And then we have Earth observation, space science, space operations, and space engineering. Although the programs are done primarily across the whole agency, and we all represent the agency, each of those campuses that we have, and we have 3 campuses, are primarily responsible for most of one of the programs. So this facility that you're in now, we are primarily responsible for what we call the space science program. So, and now just a little bit about SANSA Hermanus to give you a bit of background, because it's a story that I'm trying to tell along the way here. The facility was established in 1940 in Hermanus. We commenced operations on the 1st of January 1941. When I say we, it's the royal we, not me. So last year we celebrated 80 years of magnetic observations, which we were very proud of. We were previously known as the Hermanus Magnetic Observatory, and we migrated to SANSA in April 2011, as I mentioned. We have 16 hectares of land here in Westcliff. This land is defined as a magnetically clean environment, which is the reason why we're able to do so much of the work that we do here, and also why we are so particular about who comes on site, what they do on site, how we build, etc., because our business depends on us preserving this magnetically clean environment. We currently have 80 employees based here in Hermanus. 12 years ago when we moved into the Space Agency, we only had 36. So we've grown quite substantially over the years, and we now have about 80 employees and about 20 additional people, and that's students, visitors. So currently at the moment we have 3 international research visitors on site. We're expecting more in March. We also have 20, or actually probably I think about 12 now, postgraduate students who are living on site and working on site. So generally there's about 100 people on site. SANSA has 210 employees across the country, and so just more than a third of the employees are based here in Hermanus. And then we have a lot of activities. We host between 10 and 20 international visitors a year, run at least 1 international conference a year, and at least 2 student schools per year. We've been internationally designated, and this is a part of the story I'm going to tell you tonight, as a regional centre for space weather information provision, particularly to the aviation sector. And we operate approximately 40 measuring stations around Southern Africa, Antarctica, and the islands, and we gather data. So we are very good at measuring space from the ground. Recently, in February 2022, we became ISO certified, so all the products and services we produce in this part of the Sensors business has an ISO quality certification attached to it, something that I'm personally very proud of. Okay, in a nutshell, you can say that our facility is responsible for the research to operations value chain. So we take fundamental and applied research and we use it to then develop applications and solutions for our clients and our stakeholders. So why space weather? So several years ago, I think we sort of started in space weather research in the 2000s, when it was still quite a novelty to coin the space environment as a space weather. And we started off doing research in those years. In 2007, we received our first designation, and we had one person doing effectively space weather in an office, and we were designated as a regional warning centre for South Africa with the government's approval. And we were asked to try to build a program in space weather research at the time. If you look at the picture on the left-hand side here, that's the picture I like to refer to as our environment. It's the near-Earth space environment. So from the sun all the way to the Earth. And most importantly, the impact that it has on the Earth. So we are interested in space weather, and we are fighting against this global challenge of space weather. And space weather has been declared a global challenge along the same lines as climate change. So it is a global phenomenon that we're all trying to understand in the world. And most importantly, we're trying to understand how it impacts our technology. So I can tell you lots of stories about how it impacts rail and maritime and the aviation industry. It impacts the aviation industry significantly, but I guess the most closest to home impact that you might feel is the impact it might have on your cell phone. So I'm pretty sure most of you have at least one cell phone. And space weather can impact your cell phone. It can impact your ability to navigate, to find your way. It can also impact your communication systems and our internet, which we've become very dependent on, particularly since COVID. So those are the ways in which it would impact you as a normal person. The aviation industry is very worried about space weather, because space weather, it doesn't matter what the sun does. When the sun sneezes, aviation gets out of whack. It's because everything that happens on the sun affects some system in the aviation's system. So it affects navigation, so their landing and takeoff systems. It affects communication, so their ability to communicate ground to ground and ground to air. It affects the ability to, it affects the amount of radiation exposure that their pilots and their crew have, especially if they fly closer to the poles. And I'm forgetting one, I think. GNS I talked about, communications talked about, and radiation exposure. Yeah, no, I've talked about them all. So it affects a large percentage of them, and that's why the International Civil Aviation Organization declared it necessary for all aviation partners to file space weather information with their flight plans. And that information could only be obtained from designated centres. And so they designated 5 centres around the world, of which South Africa, through the Space Agency, was one of them. And that's part of the story. I'm going to show you a small video clip. It's only 1.5 minutes. But it basically, I like to title it, What Could Go Wrong? I don't know how many of you have seen that Sanlam advert of the unmanned car driving along the road and the robot that says what can go wrong. I always think of space weather when I see that advert, because it's so true. I mean, space weather is one of those things that affects our daily lives, but until something goes wrong, we don't think about it. So this video clip was made to illustrate what your life might be like if there was no space. How does space affect your life? And space weather is connected to that. So let's have a listen.
The advancement of space-based technology has brought about many benefits to our society. First, to communicate. find our way and to predict adverse weather conditions. It even helps us to plan our cities and towns. So what would happen?
Okay, there we go. Thank you.
The advancement of space-based technology has brought about many benefits to our society. It helps us to communicate, to find our way, and to predict adverse weather conditions. It even helps us to plan our cities and towns. So what would happen if all our satellites stop working? It's unlikely that all our space-based technology will go out all at once. But a big space weather event could damage our satellites and ground infrastructure and cause issues with daily tasks. We rely on satellites for air traffic communications and weather prediction. We rely on satellites for navigation. Power grids are vulnerable to the onslaught of continuous space weather events. Modern farming methods are increasingly reliant on space-based technology for sowing, crop care, and harvesting support. We rely on satellites to provide time synchronization that allow for international money transfers and ATM banking. Space-based technologies are a catalyst for development, innovation, and creating a better life for all on this earth. It is thus important to protect these technologies against threats such as space weather, which can harm technology and impact our daily lives. At the South African National Space Agency, we work around the clock to create products and services that will help mitigate the effects of space weather to our technologies to secure a better future for South Africans and the continent.
Okay, so that gives you just a little bit of sense of how important space is for our daily lives. So one of the things that we look at, and which we've been looking at as part of this global challenge of space weather, is the economic impact of space weather. So what would it cost the country, the several countries, if we were to lose GNSS navigation ability for an entire day? There was a US study that showed that the cost to the US alone would be around $1 billion a day to lose all navigation capability. And space weather can do that. We tend to look at space weather storms with different levels of severity. So in this economic case, we looked at moderate and extreme space weather and the cost to satellite technology, energy, communications and navigation, security and transport. And you can see that the cost varies depending on what the technology is. But like in the video, satellite technology is utilized for a wide range of the things we take for granted. And in a moderate storm, you might lose one satellite. And typically there would be redundancy. But in an extreme storm, you could lose 10 to 100 satellites. And it goes on and on and on. And I mentioned the communication and navigation aspect, which I think is quite important. I've recently decided not to talk too much about the energy impacts because of our current situation with load shedding. I don't want to get myself into too much trouble. So because of this picture of the economic impact of space weather, the UK was the first country to come along and put space weather on their national risk register. And that really rose the risk, or sort of brought to light the risk that space weather has for a nation. And they showed on this on their risk matrix that there was between a 1 in 20 and a 1 in 2 chance that severe space weather would occur and cause severe economic impact. All right. So this really elevated the risk element of space weather, and the UK really led the race to look at the economic impact and the global challenge of space weather and how do we classify it in terms of the risk. So what is South Africa doing about it? So about 3 years ago, we launched what we call the Operational Space Weather Services Project. Actually, it was just over 3 years ago, on the 1st of October 2019. I mentioned the International Civil Aviation Organization that passed this regulation that all flight plans must file space weather information, just in the same way as they file terrestrial weather information, etc. They must understand the space weather conditions before they fly. And not only before they fly, but actually during the flight as well, especially for long distance flying. They also said that the space weather advisory information must include one or more of those 4 elements on the screen there: high frequency radio communication, satellite comms, GNSS-based navigation, surveillance, and radiation exposure at flight levels. They also declared that this information could only come from ICAO-designated centres, and that states that wanted to put up centres for being designated centres must undergo an international audit. So South Africa, we put up our hand. We had been part of the international community discussing this. Although we were not entirely ready, we felt that we had enough legacy behind us to be able to get ready. And so we put up our hand and we underwent a year-long international audit, at the end of which ICAO announced 5 centres, of which South Africa was one. And this gave us the catalyst. So we were designated to provide this information to aviation in a very formalized process that ICAO put forward. But we realized that this was an opportunity for us. This was an opportunity to build capability, not only to serve the aviation sector, but to serve all sectors. South Africa already had a legacy in space weather, and that legacy had been built on the legacy that we have here at the facility in terms of geomagnetic data and positioning as a magnetic clean environment. So I mentioned in 2007 we started. In 2010 we opened our first Space Weather Centre, which was a limited focus research and development centre. And those of you who have visited us in the past would have maybe visited the centre in our reception area. And I say limited focus because we only provided bulletins and warnings to high-frequency communication impacts, and only during the day. And we mostly did research and development around space weather. In 2018, we upgraded that same centre, but just from an IT perspective, making sure that it was more state-of-the-art. 2018 was also the year we got our designation from ICAO, so we put together a business plan for space weather, and we went to the government. We convinced them that space weather was a global challenge. South Africa could punch above our weight, and that we were prepared to give it what it took to be able to open a 24/7 operational space weather centre in 2022. The centres must, and then we stated all of this in our business case, as well as expanding that aviation was the catalyst, but we would be able to provide to other areas. And the requirements were that we needed to be able to monitor the relevant ground-based, airborne, and space-based observations to tell us what was happening with space weather in the 4 domains that I mentioned. We must be able to issue advisory information, supply that advisory information to appropriate aviation channels for ICAO, but also for other channels as well, maintain a 24-hour watch, and we must be an active collaborator in the international network. So we put together a project to establish a 24/7 operational space weather capability by October 22 to provide services in accordance with the ICAO requirements. And so our standard that we set was the ICAO requirements, figuring that if we met those standards, we would be able to meet the standards for other sectors as well. Be ISO 9001 certified and provide products and services related to space weather impacts for the African region. We also wanted to, through this space weather project, ensure a value proposition for South African Space Science Program. This is what we went to the department with. And they bought into this, and in June 2019, the Director General came to Hermanus to announce that the department was going to fund the establishment of a 24/7 operational space weather capability. And the project was officially launched on the 1st of October 2019. We had 4 objectives, main objectives for the project. The one was to go 24/7. Not actually as simple as it sounded when we laid it out on paper, but we needed to be able to offer the services round the clock. The other was to increase our products and services. We had well-tested, well-run products for HF comms, but not for the other domains. So we had to get our data, turn it into operational data, and do a lot of development work. We needed to meet the user requirements. We must be able to provide quality certification. We must be customer-centric. We must understand what our users want and how they're going to use the information so that we can take it further. And then the foundation required for the services, the fundamental research, the modeling, the training and development. We would have to train specialized space weather forecasters who would be able to provide this service. All of that had to be taken into account. So we divided the project into 7 sub-projects, of which building a custom-built space weather center was one of them. So the building, essentially, although it's the most visible part of what you can see, so it's the part everybody goes wow about, it's the most visible part, was just one of 7 elements that we put together for this project. The other was the ISO certification, the development of products and services, an African instrumentation network. We had to increase our ground-based instruments so that we could get the data we needed to provide the service. Skills, capacity, and capability was very important, so the department also threw into the mix a research chair in space weather as part of the National Research Chair Program. We were the only non-university to receive an exclusive right to a research chair in a specialization, and we called it the Research Chair in Space Weather, who specializes in solar physics. We received the chair, and we were able to recruit internationally for the chair and bring somebody on board. And then, and also under skills, capacity, and capability, we also took unemployed university graduates and trained them to be space weather forecasters. So we have 7 people that we brought in specifically for that part of the job. Then communications, business development, and marketing. Space weather is not an easy sell. You can see from the video, and you can see when I present, that it's something that requires some kind of understanding. You also it's not obvious you need it. When you go home tonight, assuming you've got power, you will pop something in the microwave. We all know how useful a microwave is, right? And so I'm always telling my team, you must remember that we're not selling microwave ovens. People don't know that they need space weather, so we have to create awareness and education around it. And then ICT architecture, the ICT design around the Space Weather Control Center and what we have produced and are able to serve is very key. So by doing all of those 7 projects, we ticked a lot of boxes in terms of developing capability, deriving economic benefit, internationalization, boosting our credibility in the international sector was all part of this as well. Contributing to the knowledge economy. We know more now about space weather and its impacts in our environment than we did 3 years ago. Okay, so this was the project that we launched. We launched the capability, and we called it the launching of the capability, not launching of the Space Weather Center, because as you can see, the capability was much bigger than just the building. But we launched it with our minister on the 3rd of November 2022. We are very proud of the fact that this project we were able to deliver on time and in budget during COVID, which was one of the very few projects that could say that. And it's now given us the operational center and the capability, and we're now in a position to help to enable the mitigation of the risk created. This was the architect's impression. So after we passed the plans, they presented us with these drawings. And I remember we also asked them to build a model, and we have a model of the building, this building, and this guest house next door in the reception area. And I remember one of my staff members saying to me, as they were building the building, saying, "Gosh, the building looks just like the model and just like the photograph." It's like completely amazing. This building design, we asked them to design something more space agency appropriate. And actually, since we launched, this building has featured in 3 top-of-the-range architectural magazines as futuristic designs. So that was something that we didn't actually anticipate that's come through. So we launched the capability on the 3rd of November. We've received an incredible amount of publicity, not only for SANS and space weather, but also for Hermanus and being the center of space weather. The picture on your right-hand side is the picture of our space weather team. The lady in the middle, right in the middle there, standing with a blue shirt, and the short one in the middle is Mimpo. She's the head of our Space Weather Center, and the others are all space weather forecasters. You will notice several things about the team. Firstly, they're all young. And secondly, of the 9 people standing there, 8 of them are women. So it was also something that we intentionally went about sorting out. And then, we've had lots and lots of publicity over that. So what can we do now that we've got the 24/7 operational space for the centre? So we're very proud of ourselves. We did this project and it all worked out very well, and we can tell the government money well spent. So from this very centre, from the control room that you see on the foyer there, we provide space weather information and forecasting on a 24/7 basis. We are still an expert centre in high-frequency communications, and we've now been able to expand that, so we can also do impacts and information related to impacts on navigation applications. We've also expanded our space weather research so that we can continuously learn and plough that learning into our modelling and forecasting. We also spend a lot of time with users and industry to understand what their needs are and to provide them for advice and information on how best to utilise. So the project impacts, the total investment in the whole project was around 107 million rand over the 3-year period. Direct impacts were we created 15 professional jobs in the 3-year period and 45 temporary construction jobs. At any one moment in time during this building process, there were 45 local people building on this site. There were 10 local subcontractors, and we also insisted that at least 70% of the material content was sourced locally as well. Indirect impacts include the public interest in science and technology, knowledge generation, and our international prestige and standing. And then induced impacts, so this whole facility had to be upgraded to ensure that it could support 24/7 operations. So the facility, we installed a new generator, which we never dreamt would be used as much as it's being used right now. We installed new internet lines, both with a redundancy as well, because if the internet goes down, that's like a disaster of highest magnitude here, if we lose internet access, because that's how everything comes in and everything goes out. In terms of human capital development, so I've talked about the space weather forecast and the training and development. That 4 trained during the project should actually be 7. We also have done a lot of work with research students, postdoctoral fellows and interns in terms of teaching them about space weather, but also giving them opportunities in the space weather domain through projects, etc. We have our national partners, so Air Traffic and Navigation Services and the South African Weather Services have been very key partners in this project and have worked extremely closely with us. The Department of Transport represents South Africa at ICAO. We've had their full support for this as well. And then we've also done a lot of work with national universities. And in fact, on the 13th of March, we will have a university stakeholder day for our university partners. In 2018, even before the ICAO designation, we already knew that the aviation sector was going to have to be ready for space weather. So we set up a national space weather working group under the ATNS, under one of the ATNS committees, which included a lot of the users of space weather information, from the pilots to the airlines to the airports company, so that we were already starting to have that conversation with them long before we built the capability. I've mentioned a lot of this, our international status, a lot of international prestige has been built up around this. And we sit on a number of international groups. So one of the recent things is that the World Meteorological Organization has set up a permanent expert group on space weather, and SANSA is one of the co-chairs of that international group. We've also become the leading space weather voice for Africa. So there is, we're leading an African regional project for the African aviation sector through the African Met Office for ICAO. And then we have gained international prestige for research to operations in space science. Okay, this is just about some of the capability benefits. So now we've got the capability. What benefits would we hope to accrue? So the service from the Space Weather Centre will be operate on a cost recovery basis. So users will pay to access the information in the format that they need. But we will still host visitors for free. So, and then additional benefits include like human capital development opportunities, increased knowledge generation, increase in the number of professional skilled jobs that we will have, and then increased visibility as well. We will create a balance here between public good, because it's been funded by the government, as well as commercial user-paid services. Okay, and then in conclusion, so we had anticipated and we saw that space weather events can create vulnerabilities within our technological dependencies, and it's a risk to the economy and it's a risk to the technologies that we've become so dependent on for our daily lives. In the aviation sector, space weather can affect safety of life principles, and compliance with ICAO is now a requirement. So through this project, we've addressed operational capability for space weather information provision as a service to the African region. And then we are going to continue to do this and to partner with various stakeholders to ensure that we grow our capability. So one of the things about space weather, which I actually, I realize that I don't say very often, but the major event, the major solar storm we're preparing for, we haven't seen yet. We haven't seen it in our lifetime yet. We know it's coming. We're preparing for it. We understand from the minor storms and the different levels of storms what might happen. And also we have evidence from the sort of early on big storms that happened. But we haven't actually anticipated it. So every time a storm happens, every time we see a space weather event, we learn something new that then feeds into our models and we get better and better at forecasting it. So the capability will continue to grow. So this has been establishing a capability that will continue to grow and to contribute. So and then finally, I think we can be proudly South African. We really punched above our weight internationally to get this project off the ground and to get international support. The space weather capability builds on a research and development legacy that we have at SANSA. It meets the requirements for international compliance. It provides a domestic capability to enable risk mitigation and empower decision making, so it's an important capability as well. It contributes towards the development of a national capability in critical skills that improve domestic and regional know-how. So the level of skills that we need to run this center and to run this capability extends from programming and software development to physics research and mathematics and a lot of other skills in between as well, IT skills. It demonstrates the value in research to operations and positions South Africa in the global space market. And so we are very proud of what this building symbolizes for us and what we've been able to do with this project. And I hope as fellow South Africans and fellow Hermanus residents that you're also proud of what we've done. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Leanne. I'd just like to say we can justifiably be proud to have such a highly innovative and successful technology facility in Hermanus. Congratulations, it's a fantastic job. And I think we've said it a few times this evening, if this evening's procedure and meeting for us goes too smoothly, then it's going to be very difficult not to come back. And unfortunately, everything's gone very smoothly, apart from the occasional battery that's gone flat. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Well then, thanks very much for attending, and that will conclude our meeting. And you're welcome to have a cup of tea and a couple of biscuits outside afterwards. Thank you very much. Thanks.
Thank you.